welcome to this presentation on automatic animation retargeting with optimized Mixamo characters in Unreal Engine 5.4. My name is Greg Keast and I'll be your host. I am really excited to bring this presentation to you. The auto retargeter was introduced in 5.4 and it has really revolutionized the way retargeting is done. It is so simple and intuitive now that it's next level. The possibilities with this are just endless. The biggest thing about it is it's going to allow a lot of people to focus on creativity and not so much on retargeting. So it really is a time saver. It's absolutely fantastic. This presentation is about 40 minutes long, and this is our plan. First, I want to give a little background about root bones and root motion and why this is so important. And then we're going to dive into Mixamo. We're going to explore the Mixamo converter, and I'm going to explain what it is and what it does. And then we're going to use that to optimize our Mixamo characters. And then once that's done, we're going to import those assets into Unreal Engine to transfer those Mixamo animations to the Unreal Mannequin and the Unreal MetaHuman. By the end of this presentation, you will know how to optimize Mixamo characters and animations, and you should be able to retarget animations like the ones you're seeing right now. I think you're going to get a lot out of this, so let's get going. Okay, in this section we wanted to talk about what root motion is. Before we get into what root motion is, we probably should talk about what a root bone is. Here we have an image of a skeleton, and you can see the root bone is on the very bottom. A root bone is essentially the first bone in the character skeleton, and as you can see on the left side, it's on the top of the hierarchy there. And so hence the name is root. What's different about the root bone is that it's not meant to deform the skeletal mesh. All the other bones are meant to deform the skeletal mesh and bend it or twist it in one way or another. But the root bone is a foundational bone, and it remains stationary if it's not animated or otherwise moved. Unlike other bones too, it also serves as a point of reference for the entire rig, leading to the very next point, which is essentially it can move the whole character without affecting the actual animation of the rig, skeletal rig. It can rotate, it can translate or change location or position in 3D space relative to world space. So that's what the root bone is. Which leads us into the topic of what is root motion. Simply put, root motion means the root bone has movement associated with it. It's not stationary, it's not locked down. So it means the root bone moves with or drives the rest of the skeletal rig. And in this image, which was taken from the content examples, you'll see that the root bone is locked down and there's no animated root motion. It's not moving, it's locked in place. It looks almost like a struggle that he's fighting against it. If there is no root motion and the root bone is stationary or locked, then the root bone will stay in place. Enabling root motion means the movement component and the collision capsule can use the root bone's movement to stay with the skeletal rig, and that will allow it to collide appropriately and interact appropriately with other objects in the scene. Otherwise, it could just end up going right through objects, which is not really appropriate in most cases. Root motion also allows animations to loop recursively so that in-place animations can appear to be moving. The bottom line for all this is that if you have the opportunity to add a root bone to your character, you probably should, because it has so much application and helps prevent other problems that can arise, like losing the collision capsule. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to jump into Unreal Engine and show you a couple of other things. Here in Unreal Engine, I am just in a third-person template, and I just want to give you a really clear example of what's going on with animation in Unreal. Let me go into the Blueprint third person here, and if I click into here and go to the viewport, you'll see that we have our BP third-person character here. And then you'll see there's a capsule component. And if I select it, you'll notice, and this is really serving as the basis of many calculations. And then we also have this character movement component, right? So this is, in a sense, the capsule, in a sense, represents even though it's for collisions. In a sense, it represents the movement component and the player controller in a sense. It's almost the visual representation of all those things. But it's the player controller and the character movement component that are actually causing the player to move in 3D space in our games. Now, if I select the character mesh, you'll notice it highlights this part and it reflects the animation that's going on with the character. So there's really two things happening at once when you see a character moving in a scene. The character movement component along with the player controller are forcing the character to move through the scene, the capsule, and then we attach the mesh and its animation inside of the capsule. And so the trick really is getting the animation to match what the capsule is doing, so that if the capsule is moving forward, the animation is a moving forward animation. If the capsule is turning right, the character animation is turning right. If the character is turning left, the character animation is turning left. If the capsule is coming to a stop, the animation needs to come to a stop. So a lot of the complexity in animation is really a result of this interplay between what the player controller is doing and what the animation is doing. Now, I can give you a perfect visual representation of this. If we come over here to the animation and we just set it to custom and essentially turn it off, and I compile and save that, you'll see how the character freezes up because there's no animation. It basically goes into an A pose. And then if I go into the game here and I hit play, really what you're seeing here is exactly what that top line says. The player controller plus movement component equals raw movement in the game. And that's what's going on here. This is the player controller and the movement component moving our capsule that you can't see through the 3D space. So it's all very interesting, right? What's happening here. And you see we have the collision, and that's coming from the capsule. Like I can't go through walls. But this is really what's happening in the game when we're moving around. This is what we're really doing. But it's the animation, as we say right up here, animation is what provides the illusion of refined character movement in the game. And the complexity comes from the animation trying to sync up with what the player controller is doing. If I escape out of here and I come back into the BP third person and I re-enable the animation blueprint and bring our animation back, then we're back to normal and you see the player character running through the game. But this is an illusion. It's really the player capsule that's moving, and this animation is just staying with it so well that it's creating the illusion that the mesh is moving itself, but it's really the movement component along with the player controller that's causing this movement. Now let me hit escape, and if we come into the content examples, which is absolutely an amazing asset, if you come to maps, this is the content examples that you can get for free online. If you come in here and go on to maps, you'll see that one of the first levels is called animation basics. And one of the first ones that you'll see is 1.3.1, and here it defines what root motion is, and it gives some examples. So let's just hit F11 and hit Alt P to come into the level, and we'll take a look at these examples, which are really, really great. So it's just a little ways down the hallway here, and it's this very first one right here. So let's see what it says. Root motion, what is it? Root motion is a term that describes whether or not the root bone has movement baked into it or onto it. You can see the animation on the left has no root motion, and so the root motion just stays grounded and locked. And then the animation on the right, you'll see that the with root motion enabled, the root bone goes along with the player character. And what you're going to see, what is the advantage of doing this, is in this next demo over here, you'll see the application of root motion. So you'll see with no root motion that the animated character can actually leave the capsule and loses its collision ability. And so it actually goes right through the stairs. But on the right side, with the root motion enabled, the capsule and the movement component can follow along with the root bone and take the capsule with it. So now the player can go over stairs, which is a more complex animation, of course, going upstairs. I encourage you to come into the content examples and take a look at all of these demo displays. There's a lot to learn here, but I just wanted to give you a sense of what root motion is about. Now, in the next section, we're going to be diving into downloading some characters from Mixamo. So I will see you in the next section. In this section, we are on Mixamo.com, and I'm going to show you how to download a couple animations and get started. The first thing you want to do is find a character. So you can come up here to characters and just pick somebody that you like. I really like the characters that have their faces covered because you can then do voiceover and don't have to worry about lip sync. Sometimes when you click the character, it won't load up, and so you have to hit Control F5 and refresh the page. I think there's over 100 characters that are available, and there's over 2,000 animations, so it's an incredible library of assets that you can use. And then when you realize these assets can then be transferred over to other characters, it's even more expansive. What we're going to do next is we're going to go into animations, select the T-pose here, and I don't know if there's a hyphen, so I'm going to search for T-pose, and it's this one right here, and make sure the character's in T-pose. And then all you need to do is click download, and you want keyframe reduction on none. You want the character with the skin, and you can change this to 60 if you'd like, but 30 should be fine for our purposes. And then you simply go download, and it just takes a minute to do. And then you can just go find a couple other animations. Let's look for, let's say, a dancing one. Dance, let's see what we can find. I'd like to find one where the character is kind of moving around a little bit here. Remember, none of these animations have a root bone on them. Let's get one of these breakdance ones. How about this one? See what that looks like. Oh, wow. He is moving around quite a bit, isn't he? So this would be a good one for root motion. One tip here, in my experience with Mixamo, is that the character arm space can usually become a problem. You can experiment with it, watching the animation very closely and seeing if you notice anywhere where it's clipping. Like I see the arms going in beneath the surface right there. I don't believe there's anything we can do for that, but just to make sure that the arms aren't clipping anywhere, you might want to adjust this up to, like, let's say 60, to avoid any of the appendages clipping into the body. You can always come back and adjust that. But let's go ahead and download this one. This could end up being problematic because I do notice he's going beneath the ground there. But here on the second download, when you get after you got the T-pose, be sure to put it to without skin because we don't need the skin. So we'll go ahead and download that, and that's just going to take a minute. And then let's see, what other animation could we look for? Something that's entertaining. Let's see, do we have any more dancing one? How about this MMA kick? This looks kind of interesting. So let's get this one. And this is, again, where you could look closely at the animation and make sure that there's no clipping going on here. His arms seem awfully big for his body in a way. So like I said, just to be on the safe side, I'm just going to go ahead and bump that up to 60. So I'd rather have more space than less space and have it clip. So that's good enough, and we'll just go ahead and download this one too. Okay, so these will come into wherever we download them to, usually our download folder, and then we'll be able to bring them into the Mixamo converter. So we'll work on doing that in the next section. So I will see you there. In this section, we're going to go ahead and download the Mixamo converter. There's a few steps involved with that, but I also wanted to go into some detail about the process here of what we're doing. There's essentially two processes involved with the Mixamo converter, or Mixamo. The first process is where you want to transfer Mixamo animations to either mannequins or metahumans in Unreal Engine. And the second process is where we want to import Mixamo characters with their animations. So when we do the process number 2, we really don't need to do any retargeting because we're going to be using the Mixamo characters that we've already downloaded. Now, the Mixamo converter has special rigs that they built specifically for Mixamo, optimized for Mixamo. So if our goal is to transfer Mixamo animations to mannequins or metahumans in Unreal Engine, then we want to use those optimized rigs for the conversion process. So that's what we're really going to be doing in this series, is process number 1. So I just wanted to clarify that there's 2 separate processes depending on what you're wanting to work with. If you're wanting to work with Mixamo characters alone, you would do process 2. If you're wanting to transfer the Mixamo animations to mannequins or metahumans, then we want to do process number 1. The only issue is we really can't do process number 1 until we've downloaded the converter. So that's why it seems a little bit out of order. But at least I've shown you kind of the beginning of process 2. Let's go ahead and jump into Google and search for the Mixamo converter. The first thing that comes up should be Mixamo converter. Notice the URL that we're in this subdirectory kind of section equals Mixamo converter. So make sure you're on this page and no other page. You'll know you're on the right page if it says unzip password right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and highlight that and press Control C so I don't have to enter it again. And you should have this option to do a direct download. All you need to do is just go ahead and click that button. And it just takes a couple minutes for it to download depending on your internet speed. The latest version, this 2.4, actually supports frame rates of up to 60 frames per second. And as you can see down here, the software size is about 26 megabytes. So it's not terribly big. Once that's finished downloading, we can go into our downloads folder here, and you'll see it comes in as a zip file. If you've already had a history of downloading it, it may not ask for a password. In my case, I'm not sure if it's going to ask for it or not, but I have it on my clipboard just in case. So what we're going to do is right click, and we're just going to go extract all and just go extract. And in this case, it didn't ask for a password. If we look at it, there's these folders inside. There's an ingoing folder. There's a mannequin folder. That's what I talked about earlier that has specialized rigs in it that we're going to use. And then we have an outgoing file. So what we end up doing is we end up putting our downloaded files into incoming. And then once we go through the conversion process, the converted files end up in the outgoing folder here. But we'll go over that in more detail in another section. So in the very next section, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go back into Mixamo and use one of these Mixamo converter rigs instead of an actual Mixamo character. So I will see you in the next section. All right, in this section, we're going to be going over process number 1, and this is specifically for getting the most optimized Mixamo rig possible. So to do that, we're in Mixamo right now, and I'm going to go to where it says upload character. And I'm just going to go to my downloads folder. So here in my downloads folder is my Mixamo converter. I can click into here and you'll see there's a folder just for mannequins. And here are all the specially optimized rigs. So I'm just going to go ahead and use Manny. So specifically what we can do is we can use this rig to transfer to not only other Unreal Engine 5 or Unreal Engine 4 mannequins, but specifically to metahumans as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and double click on this, and we'll click right here and go open. And it just takes a minute. Now what's interesting about this is because this rig has been specially made, it's not going to have any problems coming in to Mixamo. There's not going to be any need for the auto rigger or anything. It should work perfectly fine. So you see it comes into the auto rigger and it's perfectly rigged up. So that's great. There's nothing to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and go next and proceed. So now we're going to do what we did earlier with the Mixamo character. We're going to follow the same basic procedure. We might get some different animations this time around though. So I'm going to go ahead and search for T-pose, double click it, and that's fine. And we'll go to download like we did before. We'll go with skin, 30 frames per second, no keyframe reduction, and we just go download. So now I just need to search for 2 more animations. So let's see. I'll search for dance, see what we got here. Let's go ahead and get this swing dancing. This looks kind of fun. Double click on it. Okay, and he's covering some ground there too. Looks like he's having some fun. Now, like I mentioned before, you want to make sure that the arms aren't clipping into the body. It can be hard to tell sometimes. So I'm just going to go ahead and, like I said, bump that up to 60 just to be on the safe side. And I think we'll be okay. He's moving pretty fast. And then we're going to go download. And this time everything's the same except without skin. So we'll go ahead and download this. And it looks like that one went through. And let's see, what else can we get here? Oh, let's get this one, this MMA kick. That looks pretty cool. Look at that. And like we did before, I'm just going to go ahead and bump this up a little bit. That looks good. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and download this one. And that'll be our 2 animations then. And that's all we have to do it this way. So in the next section, we'll go through the formal Mixamo conversion process, which is pretty straightforward. So I'll see you in that section. All right. We're ready to begin the conversion process. Now, before we begin this process, since we've downloaded the Mixamo converter, it might be a good idea to talk a little bit more about the converter itself. So let's do that. So what is the Mixamo converter? Well, simply put, it's a free program that optimizes Mixamo rigs for Unreal Engine. The site does take donations, but there is no hidden costs or fees for it. It's a free program, free to use, and so it's pretty great that somebody took the time to put this together. Now that we know what it is, what does it do exactly? Well, according to their own documentation, it enforces uniform sampling, it adds sensible joint constraints, it adds twist corrections where applicable, and most importantly, it adds a root bone and IK bones to the rig. Now, this is just an example of a Mixamo rig that was just imported straight from Mixamo. It did not go through any conversion process. And you'll notice in the upper left corner, there is no root bone in the default Mixamo rig. It has no root bone. And as we mentioned at the very beginning of this presentation, how beneficial it is to have a root bone so that you can have root motion. Now, this is that same rig after it's gone through the conversion process. And as you'll notice, you'll see now it has a root bone. And so that's the power and the beauty of what the Mixamo converter does. It is possible to add root bones in a third-party modeling program, but there's no need for it with the converter. So you don't need to go into an external program and go through all that. You can just do this through the converter. So it automates this entire process. So in a nutshell, that's what the converter does. It optimizes Mixamo rigs for Unreal Engine. It smooths out some bumps in the road, and it adds essentially the root bone that we need for root motion. Anyway, with that, let's get into the conversion process. So here we are. Let's just talk a little bit about the structure of the program. If I double click this, this is going to start the program. Here we have an incoming folder where we put the files in it that we want to be converted. And when we're done converting, the finished files will be in this folder. And then in this folder, there are some rigs that we can upload to Mixamo if we want. We already went through this process. The first step is to get the animations that we want converted. So let's go get those. Those are here actually in my downloads folder. It would be this one here. So I'm just going to hold down Control, and I can tell by the timestamp was 9:36. It's these two right here. It's the swing dance and the MMA kick 3. So with those selected, I'm just going to right click and copy those. And then we can jump back into the converter, go into the incoming folder, and then just Control V or paste those into the incoming FBX folder. And with that done, I can come back in here and now just double click the Mixamo converter. I'll make it full screen. So this is it. We are in the Mixamo converter right now. If I just click on the screen, this is our main menu here. And I'll just click here to enter the conversion process. And they have some documentation here where it goes into some detail. You're more than welcome to read through that if you want. And here you'll see are the 3 files that we placed into the folder. And what's interesting about this process, there's also this custom root motion if you want to get into that, so that you can control the root height and orientation, which can be used for climbing, but we don't need to worry about that for right now. And this is an optional step. And so really all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to click this button, this hyperlink, and it's going to begin the conversion process. It just takes seconds, and now all the files have been converted and they're placed in that outgoing FBX file. So that completes the conversion process. It's as simple as that. Let's go ahead and import these into Unreal Engine. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a new project. And we're in Unreal Engine 5.4. And then here, what we're going to do is we're just going to go into Games, Third Person. I'll just call it Mixamo, and we'll go Create. And it's just going to take a minute to get going. Okay, so here we are. One thing I like to do is just come up here to the window and load the default editor, and then just click the content drawer and dock it in the layout. And go to the content level folder. And now let's go ahead and import those converted rigs with their animation. So I'm going to go to Add here, Import to Game. Now the first thing I want to import is the T-pose. So I'm going to go back to my Downloads folder here, go into the Mixamo converter, click into here, go to the outgoing FBX folder, and I want to select the T-pose first and go Open. Now there's just a couple settings on here. We do want to import the skeletal mesh, the import mesh options. We do want to import animations. The T-pose is considered an animation. Under this first advanced tab, I'm going to click it, and we want to select Use T-pose as reference pose, and then we can close that. And then under the second advanced tab, we want to use default sample rate and snap to closest frame. And those 3 settings are all we need to do, and those will prevent us from getting additional errors. And all we have to do then is go import all. And this is the fully optimized rig, so I'm not anticipating any problems. We didn't get one error, so that's fantastic. And it brings in the 6 assets, 2 materials. We've got our skeletal mesh, our animation sequence, which is just a T-pose, our physics asset, and then a skeleton here. So it's perfect. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back here to Add, Import, and now we're just going to bring in these 2 animations. We can bring in both at the same time and go Open. And it finds the rig, the skeletal rig, and we go Import All. The first one should come in and then the second one. And see, they both come in. So let's come up here to File, and we'll go Save All. Now, it's not necessary for retargeting for me to drag these into the scene, but I just want to drag them into the scene just to show you that they're working. So at least this one. So if I hit F and come down here, you'll see, the first thing you'll see is he doesn't have the materials on 100%, but that's okay, because we're not worried about his materials, because we're going to, in the next section, we're going to transfer this animation. But I want to show you something that you can do before we get into the next section, and it just takes a second to do. So we're going to go up to Window, and we're going to go to Place Actors, and we're going to get a cine camera, and we're going to drag this into the scene like this, and hit the space bar, and then just turn it 90 degrees like that. We could actually go into the cine camera mode here and just fly back and get a position where we can kind of see the whole animation, and then just come out of pilot mode. And then on the current aperture on the camera, just put it at 22, and that should put everything in focus. And then search for something called Constrain Aspect Ratio and turn that off. And then the last thing is, with our cine camera selected in the scene, let's go into the level blueprint here and go on event begin play, or we can get a reference to the cine camera. And what we want to do is set up a camera so that when we go to look at these animations, we can see them wholly and we don't have to, we're not tied to the player character camera. So I want to set up a camera where we can really look at the animations and appreciate them. Well, that's what we're doing here. So I'm going to go event begin play right here, and then off of here, well, I'll right click and search for get player controller right here, and off of the player controller we're just going to go set view target with blend, and this will allow us to activate that camera instead of the player camera. So we'll just pop that in there like that, compile and save, and let's just go ahead and dock this up here in case we need it again. And now if I hit play, we should see this animation playing. And there we go. To be honest with you, it looks amazing. It looks really, really amazing. It looks very fluid and animated, and it looks it really looks good. So just imagine the work that we'd have to have gone through if we were going to try to get this on motion capture. And instead we got this wonderful, hilarious animation with so much movement, and in just a few, relatively few steps, we've got it. Now this animation can be applied to a metahuman and to the other UE4 and the UE5 mannequins. So we've got a tremendous asset that we can use now in our projects. So anyway, in the next section, what we're going to do is we're going to transfer this animation to the UE5 mannequin. And then in the next section, we'll transfer this animation to a metahuman. That'll bring us pretty close to finishing up everything. So anyway, I'll see you in the next section. Okay, in this section, we actually are going to get into the meat and potatoes of this presentation, and that is retargeting. Auto retargeting system was introduced in Unreal Engine 5.4. Formerly, when it was released, it was called automatic animation retargeting for bipedal characters. This allows us to easily retarget industry standard rigs one to another. And so this is a major advancement that makes it very simple and easy to retarget animations. In the documentation, the system is actually referred to simply as auto retargeting. And in my testing of the system, it works very well. I really haven't had any problems with it at all. So it's working very well, and I think it will only continue to get better and better. So let's jump into Unreal Engine and retarget an animation. So this is where we left off. We had imported two animations from Mixamo. One is an MMA kick and one is a swing dancing. And so if I hit play, we can see our character is dancing away just fine. It looks fantastic. So what we'd like to do is retarget this animation onto our official Unreal Engine 5 mannequin. To do that, the process is really straightforward. I'm going to hit escape. What we do is we just select the animation that we want to retarget, right click and go to retarget animations. And it's going to bring up this retarget animations window, and I'm going to go ahead and open this up. We have a source, which is the one we want to transfer from, and we need to pick a target. So in this case, I want to use the SKM Manny, this one, and it comes in, and all I have to do is double click this. Now you notice this is really what's going on here is it's all with this system right here where it says auto generate retargeter. So this is actually going to create an IK retargeting rig for us automatically. So that's what's amazing about this system. And all I have to do is double click this or double click this, and you'll see straight away the animation has retargeted over flawlessly. So that's really great. I have two options down here. One is to export retarget assets, which will create 3 assets with an IK rig for each character and then an IK retargeting rig. And if we get into problems like where a retargeting didn't work out well, we would choose this option, and then we could go into the retargeter and make some adjustments in there. But if everything is targeted up correctly, there's no need to do that. So we can just go to export animations here. This content folder is highlighted. If I left click and then right click, I can create a new folder, and I'm just going to call this Mixamo. I've already created a folder in here called Mixamo Animations, so I'm going to call this Mixamo Animations number 2, and we simply go export and then export again. And just like that, the animation sequence is created and it's successfully retargeted. And I can go save all, and if I drag this into the scene and I hit play, you'll see we've got our animations perfectly retargeted. It's absolutely amazing. So this is a tremendous tool that's going to save a lot of time and make it very easy to retarget animations. And essentially what this does is this opens up a whole world of animations where we can bring in hundreds of animations that we want and transfer them between different characters. So it just opens a world of possibilities in terms of animation. And that's the reason I wanted to do this presentation, was to show you just how easy this is to set up and get going. In the next section, what we're going to do is we're going to repeat this process, but we're going to use a metahuman instead. So it's fairly similar to this process, but there's a couple different steps. So I will see you in the next section. All right, in this final section, what we're going to do is we're going to try to transfer our animation, our Mixamo animation, from Mixamo to a metahuman, and it's just a little bit more involved because the metahuman rigs are more sophisticated. To get started with metahumans, you have to come up here to the Quixel bridge, and it may prompt you to log in and sign in with your Epic Games account or create an account. But anyway, you'll see here where it says metahumans, and there's a variety to choose from. I've already attempted to download this one, Pia, and I don't know how long it might take us to do, but I'm going to go ahead and make this big, and I'm going to select this by default on the highest quality, and you'll simply go add. The metahumans require numerous plugins, so what's going to happen is if it's going to look for those plugins, and if it doesn't find them, it's going to prompt you to enable them and then restart Unreal Engine. You may have to restart your system up to 2 or 3 times. So let's see what happens. I'm going to go add. And again, it's going to take some time. And sometimes you'll notice that you won't even get a message, but it's working in the background. But sometimes there is no message on the screen telling you that that's what's going on. So let me jump into Unreal Engine here. If we jump into Unreal Engine, I might have to minimize the screen. You'll see it's created a metahumans folder, and I've got the character here, and the character will come in as a blueprint. And I've already downloaded this character before, so I don't know how many plugins I might have to enable or how many restarts I might have to do. So to prompt the system again, then just go ahead and drag this into the scene. And again, you may not see anything happen when you drag it, but it's doing a lot of things behind the scene. It's playing catch up in a certain sense. And here's what I'm talking about. You're going to get all these messages saying that there's things missing. So you have to enable, and enable. I'm getting a bad blueprint here, and it's asking for a restart. So let's go ahead and restart and save everything. So now it's restarted again. Oh, and there's my character. I can hit Shift in to put her on the ground. I only had to do one restart in this case, and I think that's because I'd already downloaded this character before and then deleted her from the project. So, but don't be surprised if you have to repeat that process 2 or 3 times, where you have to enable plugins and then do some restarts, and eventually you should end up here with your metahuman character. So all we have to do is very similar to what we did before, is we go to the, let's say we'll do the MMA kick this time. We just select that animation, right click, and go to retarget animation, and we're right back where we were before. And here the only difference is we want to search for this FMED NRW body right here. Click that as the target, and you'll see it comes in without a head. That's normal for the metahumans. And we just simply select, we double click here for our animation, and look at that. Wow, perfect, straight out of the box. So we'll go ahead and go export animation here, and this time I already have a Mixamo animations folder, so I'm just going to pick that one, and I'll go export and export again, and there the animation comes in. With this character selected in the scene, then what I'm going to do is select her body here, and I want to switch to use animation asset, and then I want to drag this into that slot right there, and there the animation is. Then I'm free to reposition her if I want. And now if I hit play, look at that. Wow. Hold on, let me back her up a little bit. That's really something, isn't it? Look at this. Let's watch this again. Wow. Look at how her hair flips around too. This is absolutely amazing. We have all those animations successfully retargeted, and it was very intuitive, simple, and easy to do. Really, super easy. So that's all you need to do. And then you've got these animations, and you can use them in your projects, your games, or whatever else you're working on. So that's all I had for this section, and I will see you in the next. Okay, well, this brings us to a close. I certainly hope you enjoyed this presentation. We covered a lot of ground, I think, in a short amount of time. We talked about root motion. We got introduced into Mixamo, how to download the assets. We explored the Mixamo converter. We looked at uploading those rigs into Mixamo and downloading them back with animations attached. We got into the auto retargeter, and we also transferred from a Mixamo mannequin to a Unreal Engine mannequin, and then from a Mixamo mannequin to a metahuman as well. All the animations turned out really well. The auto retargeting system is working really well, and I think that's a testament to just what a great job the developers and mad scientists at Epic Games have done on this. So it's a fantastic tool. It's really streamlining the retargeting process. And what this is, in my mind, is it really opens up animation to everyone. It's really not so much you have to focus on the technical, but more on the creative now. So you're really free to explore animations, hundreds of them, and work them into stories and start blending them and just going into all different kinds of things. So that's all I had. I hope you enjoyed this presentation and got something out of it, and I will talk to you next time.